Hi, this is a video on how to change the rear brakes, electronic handbrake on a, well, this is a Skoda Superb, but there are other models this will do. It's for the, let's have a look, we've got the Golf 7, the Passat 7, the Touran 2, Tiguan 2, Q2, Seat Leon, Kodiaq, and it's up to, well, up to 16, I think it is 17 perhaps. Anyway, I'll show you the pads and then you can work out if your pads look the same as that. That's the pads. And first thing we need to do is to wind the pistons back out. There are different tools you can use for this. This is a diagnostic code reader which was off eBay. It's only a cheap one. That will wind the piston back in, so you can use that one. I'm going to use the Foxwell Elite 650, which is this one, only because it's one I am to have. So I'll just wind that in, get it connected up. Okay, once you've done that, you need to plug it into the car. So if we go forward here, on the Skodas, this right hand side, I have to bend down for this, bear with me, and it plugs in. There's a little sort of maroony coloured socket under there, and it just plugs in, and as soon as you plug it in it should light up, which it does. So what we're going to do next is we're going to establish which model it is. When you do this process, make sure the handbrake's off and you've got it in gear or in park if you've got an automatic. We're going to do auto VIN. We'll turn ignition on. Turn off that. So it's a Superb, it's saying 16 but it's actually a 15, late 15. So we'll click on that. It's a saloon or estate. And then we're gonna go back, and it's going to load now, hopefully, and it's going to tell us what we're going to go into. Common special functions. I'm going to click on that, and there you see we have electronic parking brake, EPB. So we're going to click on that, and that will now get in touch with our computer on the braking system. Takes a while to go through, just bear with me on this. No communication. I might have to do that again because I don't think I flicked the ignition on in time. That's crap, to stop it, that's no good. Okay, right, so now we get into the program sequence. So what you need to do is go to start brake pad change, open brakes completely. So we'll press F1, and if you go to the back you'll hear the motor running when I do this. Okay, that's wound the pistons back out. Now what we're going to do is we're going to turn the ignition off, take the key out, and we're going to unplug the scanner. And that is now all we're going to do on the we're now going to jack the car up and remove the wheel. So we've got the jack in place. That didn't sound very good. We better cut that. Okay, right, we're jacking the car up, and now what we're going to do is we're going to remove the plastic caps that sit onto the wheel nuts, and these are a bit of a faff, these things. You put the plastic trim on, if you don't know, that lifts them off. That's pretty basic. That should be in your boot, and these I don't put these back on because if you're sat on the motorway and you can't find your thing, you can't get these off and you're stuck. Slacken the wheel before you jack it up when it's on the ground, otherwise you won't get the wheel nuts undone. I've got a electronic jobby here. So I've slackened them. I'm just going to remove the wheel nuts. And then I'm going to take the wheel off. Sometimes you'll find the wheel won't come off. And the reason being is it snags inside there, but somebody's actually greased that, so there's actually a bit of grease in there. And what it does, it sticks on there. So sometimes you have to get a rubber mallet behind and tap the wheel off. In this case, it's come off quite easily. So that's just one thing to bear in mind. If it won't come off, just get behind it with a rubber mallet and just turn the wheel and keep tapping. Okay. Safety first. Now we're going to put a jack underneath, an axle stand underneath to take the weight of the car. So we're going to jack the car up a bit more so we get the axle stand underneath. Never work underneath there just with a hydraulic jack. If the hydraulic gives away and it comes down, the chances are it will take your arm off. So safety first. Just sit it under there. Anywhere on the suspension leg will do. Let it down gently. And then you'll see that will hold it. It's gone into the grass a bit, but that won't hurt. Right, that's that bit done. Next job. Remove the dust covers on the back of the pins, of the sliders. These are not going to come off. There we go, there's one off, and there's another one down the bottom here. Sometimes you'll find people haven't put them back on or lost them. Good idea to make sure you've got hold of them. Keep hold of those, put them somewhere safe. And then what we're going to do is we're going to find a 7mm Allen key, which is that one, and that is going to go in there onto the Allen key inside the pin. This is the pin we're going to be removing here now. So also you've got to watch is the brake line. For some reason the Volkswagen always make these tight, so it's almost impossible to get the spanner on it, the socket on it. And as you can see, that is now winding that off. You may find these are a bit rusty on some of them. If they are, just squirt a bit of WD-40 or some penetrating oil on them. Same on the bottom one. It just makes life a little bit easier. When it's undone, should then release. That's the pin out there. There's the. I always take these pins out, and what you need to do is clean them up because they get a bit rusty sometimes, and that caliper slides. So these need to slide. If they're rusty, the caliper won't slide. Your brakes won't work properly. So bear that in mind. Next job, we'll remove this clip. That comes off just like that. Pretty straightforward that. And then we'll do the bottom one, which is the same process again. In on that. I've got a rubber mallet sometimes, and I just tap it loose with a rubber mallet. This one's a little bit tighter. It's not bad, but it was tighter than the. It's probably because it's nearer the bottom and it gets all the road grime on it. No need to rush these jobs, just take your time with it. And push the pin out if it's all the way out. When it's out, the caliper will become loose. Just put a screwdriver in and gently ease the caliper away, like so. Okay, the pads actually aren't that badly worn on this. They're pretty good. But as you can see, they're not actually that badly worn. The one with the spring, that goes on the back. So the one with the spring on the back. So we've got that off now. Just make sure everything looks good, everything's tight and how it should be. Next job is the piston needs to be pushed back in. There's lots of ways of doing this. Some people put a screwdriver in and do it before they remove the caliper. I tend to use a G clamp. What I tend to do is I put the clamp on the back of the caliper, and then I just put it on there. If I can get it on there. Bear with me. And then open the your brake reservoir top when you do this. It's best to do that. Push the pistons back in. That's gone all the way back in. So that's that job done. Okay, that's the piston all the way back in, flush with the, yeah. Okay, we'll remove the bottom pin now. As I say, we'll give them a bit of a wipe over. Just get them nice and clean. Get any muck off them, and then I always use, just smear them just gently, don't go mad, just a little bit of copper grease on them, and then you know they're going to slide. Also, when you do it, I always do the thread, stick a bit on the thread, pop them back into the sliders. The same on the other one, a bit of copper grease. Push him back into the hole. Right, now we need the brake pads, so I'll just go and get those. Okay. Open up the brake pads. Make sure your hands are clean, don't get any grease on the pads. You'll want one with a spring on it and one without. I always tend to just gently put a little bit of copper grease on the back. It does stop them, if you do, they do tend to squeal, it does stop that. So just a useful tip. Don't get carried away so it's on there and it all runs off and runs all over your brakes. Just want a little smear on there. Then slide your pad back into its slot. That's that one in, and that one goes in there. If you look, you can see how they go. It's not rocket science. They're pretty straightforward. They just sit in there like that, and then you can place your caliper back on. Make sure when you put the caliper back on, these springs sit so that actually holds the caliper. So the springs this side of the caliper. It's not the end of the world if you don't get it quite right. It will. You can push the spring in afterwards, but line those two up. We'll start with the bottom one, and we'll tighten up. All right, just nip them up. There's no mad tightening at this stage. And the same with the top one. Get him in line. Top one's a little bit more awkward because you haven't got much room to wiggle it, but once it gets started, it'll go. Be careful when you're doing this, you don't damage the brake line, obviously. And what I always do is just give them a little tap, just to make sure it's nice and tight. And then do the same at the bottom. They don't have to be over tight, but just make sure they're nipped up. You don't want them coming loose, obviously. I'll just double check that top one. And that's it. That's your job done on that. Just double check everything. You'll find the pistons, because the pistons are off, the pads are loose, but as soon as you put your foot on the brake, they'll tighten back up again. Right, that's that side done, and now we'll go around and do the other side. Okay, we've now pumped the brake up. The caliper that's gone now tight against the brake pad. Finally, on this side, all we're going to do is put the dust caps back on. They just press in. I'll just virtually on a little chamfer. Pop them in. Make sure everything's tight. Just check that this hose here, is anything's okay with this hose. There is a plastic, a rubber on top which looks a bit perished, but it's only protecting the joint, so there's nothing to worry about. Just check for any obvious signs of leakage or splits or anything that doesn't look right, and then you're done this side. Right, we'll go to the other side and do the other side. Okay, and this is the other side. I've just put the pads in. I'm now replacing the little dust covers on the back. Stick them back in. I've done this on the other side, by the way, so if anybody thinks I've missed anything out, I haven't. Okay, also, don't forget the spring, the dreaded spring. So, the spring goes on like that. It's pretty straightforward, these. They're not actually too tight. You can actually do these by hand. Some of them you need to use a pair of pliers and all sorts, but just make sure he's sat back on in the correct place, like that. Make sure everything's tight. Another one thing I do, another job, wheel nuts, just a little bit of copper grease on the end of them. Just makes them a little bit better when you take them off next time. It stops them sticking. And another bit of advice I'll give you is also stick a bit of copper grease, clean it up if it's rusty, and wipe a bit round there. And then that'll aid you getting the wheel off next time. If it's stuck on there, what happens is the metal on that seems to oxidise with the aluminium. And if it's on there for a long period of time, they're an absolute nightmare to get off. And you don't want to be doing that on the side of the motorway or on the A, whatever. So the easier you can get the wheel off, the better. Grease all those up, don't get any grit on them. And another useful tip, put the spare wheel, the wheel you take off, under the car. Reason being, if the jacks did fail, it's going to come crushing down on the wheel, and it's not going to come crushing down on your arm. My wife always does it when she changes wheels. She's very good at this sort of thing, and she actually got complimented by the police, didn't you, for doing it? So slide the wheel underneath. If it comes crashing down, it damages the wheel. That's better than damaging the wheel than damaging you. So I always use an axle stand as well, but that is a handy safety feature. If you haven't got an axle stand, don't do the job. You need to have something to support the car with. The wheel is just a backup. That's all that is. Anyway, I'm going to put the wheel back on now, and we're going to go to stage 3, which I'll show you in a minute. Thank you very much. Okay, and this is the other side. I've just put the pads in. I'm now replacing the little dust covers on the back. Stick them back in. I've done this on the other side, by the way, so if anybody thinks I've missed anything out, I haven't. Okay, also, don't forget the spring, the dreaded spring. So the spring goes on like that. It's pretty straightforward, these. They're not actually too tight. You can actually do these by hand. Some of them you need to use a pair of pliers and all sorts, but just make sure he's sat back on in the correct place, like that. Make sure everything's tight. Another one thing I do, another job, wheel nuts, just a little bit of copper grease on the end of them. Just makes them a little bit better when you take them off next time. It stops them sticking. And another bit of advice I'll give you is also stick a bit of copper grease, clean it up if it's rusty, and wipe a bit round there. And then that'll aid you getting the wheel off next time. If it's stuck on there, what happens is the metal on that seems to oxidise with the aluminium. And if it's on there for a long period of time, they're an absolute nightmare to get off. And you don't want to be doing that on the side of the motorway or on the A, whatever. So the easier you can get the wheel off, the better. Grease all those up, don't get any grit on them. And another useful tip, put the spare wheel, the wheel you take off, under the car. Reason being, if the jacks did fail, it's going to come crushing down on the wheel, and it's not going to come crushing down on your arm. My wife always does it when she changes wheels. She's very good at this sort of thing, and she actually got complimented by the police, didn't you, for doing it? So slide the wheel underneath. If it comes crashing down, it damages the wheel. That's better than damaging the wheel than damaging you. So I always use an axle stand as well, but that is a handy safety feature. If you haven't got an axle stand, don't do the job. You need to have something to support the car with. The wheel is just a backup. That's all that is. Anyway, I'm going to put the wheel back on now, and we're going to go to stage 3, which I'll show you. Right, brakes done, all back together. Wheels, locks, nuts put back on, torque down to the correct setting. Check your manual for that. I'm going to go back into auto VIN. It says on the screen there, fault electronic parking brake. Ignore that. Go to get the VIN number, click yes. Loading data. Superb 16 estate. Save. And go OK. Common special functions, enter. Electronic parking brake, enter. Wait for it to load. Plug diagnostic scanner in, I've done that. Release electronic brake, well, it was obviously released that when we started. Please wait. And then we're going to go back to function 2. Function 2 is end brake pad change, close brakes. So we're going to go to 2 and we're going to press enter. And we're going to press F3 to confirm. Okay, and then it says fit wheels, check brake fluid level and top up as necessary. Press F3. Brake pad mode was ended successfully. Okay. And that's it. That's the job done. That's how you change the electronic parking handbrake on a Skoda, Volkswagen, Seat, Audi. This is a 2015 and it'll be all models around that era. And the tool is a Foxwell NT650 Elite. Hope this helped. Thank you.